Marcus Vale drove his fist into her jaw, grabbed her by the hair, and dragged her across the deck while she was still bleeding. 3 days, he said, calm, forcing her head down over the rail. That's all the ocean gives. Nobody survives 3 days out here, and nobody goes looking for a woman who was never on my manifest. Emily Carter spat blood in his face, so he snapped her hand against the rail, tore the life vest off her back, and threw her 35 miles into open water. Then he sank the boat behind her and told his crew she had never existed. If you're still with me, subscribe to the channel and stay until the end of this story and comment the city you're watching from so I can see how far this story travels. The water took her the way a fist takes a throat. Emily went under so fast she didn't remember hitting the surface. 1 second she was fighting a man twice her weight, and the next she was 6 feet down in black water and every muscle in her body locked at once from the cold. She did not scream. Screaming underwater cost you air, and air was the only thing she had left. Her father's voice arrived before the panic did. That was the strange part. 12 years dead and the man still got there first. Don't fight the water, Em. Fight the clock. She stopped kicking. She let herself rise. Her face broke the surface, and she pulled in one long breath that burned all the way down and above her on the deck of the vessel she had spent 4 months trying to board. Marcus Vale was watching her drown with his hands in his pockets. She's still up, one of his men said. She won't be, Vale said. Sir, if we're wrong about her. We're not wrong about her. Vale never raised his voice. That was the thing about him that Emily would remember for the rest of her life. He never raised his voice. Log the boat as lost. Log her as never aboard. In 72 hours, she's a statistic, and statistics don't testify. The engines turned over. Emily watched the water churn white and understood with a clarity that felt almost peaceful that they were leaving her alive on purpose. A body is evidence. A missing person is paperwork. She started counting. Not seconds, not minutes. She counted the things she still had. 1, her hands. 2, her lungs. 3, the case. The waterproof case was strapped against her ribs under her jacket, and when her fingers found the edge of it, she made a sound that wasn't quite a laugh and wasn't quite a sob. 4 months. 4 months of lying about who she was, and the one thing she'd come for was still with her. Okay, she said out loud to nobody. Okay, then it wasn't for nothing. The vessel's lights got smaller. Then they were gone, and then there was nothing at all, and Emily Carter was alone in the Pacific Ocean, 35 miles from anything that could hold her weight. She did not cry. She would think about that later, when she was safe, when people asked her what it felt like, and she would never have a good answer, because the truth was ugly and simple. She didn't cry because crying is what you do when you believe someone is coming. Emily knew nobody was coming, and a person who knows nobody is coming doesn't waste water on grief. She turned in a slow circle in the black. Which way is east, she said. The sky answered her. It always had. Her father had made her learn stars the summer she turned 9, sitting on the roof of a rented house in San Diego with a flashlight and a paper chart, and she had hated it and she had complained, and he had said the thing he always said. One day the only person you can call is going to be yourself, Em. Make sure she knows something useful. She found Polaris. She fixed it over her left shoulder, and she started to swim. Not toward land. Land was 35 miles away, and she would die at mile 6. She swam toward the debris field because Vale's men had sunk the small boat, and sunk boats leave gifts, and the first rule her father ever taught her about the ocean was that the ocean doesn't kill you. Time kills you. The ocean just holds you still while it happens. It took her 40 minutes to find the piece of hull. It was maybe 5 feet across fiberglass, torn at both ends, and when she got her arms over it and pulled her chest out of the water, her whole body started shaking so hard she nearly slid off the other side. No, she said through her teeth. No, 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 not like that, not like that. She hooked her elbow through a fractured cleat and locked it there. That was hour 1. By hour 9, the sun was up, and she had made 3 decisions that saved her life, and she made all 3 of them while she was already dying. The first was the blanket. There had been an emergency blanket in the survival kit, and it had come apart in the water, and she found half of it floating 20 yards off, and swimming for it cost her energy she couldn't spare. She swam anyway, because heat loss kills faster than thirst, and half a blanket is 50% of a problem solved. The second was the metal, A strip of aluminum trim torn off the hull sharp on one edge. She kept it. She didn't announce yet what she'd use it for. She kept it anyway. The third was the hardest. She opened the case. She lay on the hull with the sun cooking the back of her neck, and she opened the waterproof case and she looked at the notebook inside, and the pages were dry, and the names were still there, and the dates were still there, and the coordinates were still there. And Emily Carter, who had not cried when a man threw her into the ocean, put her forehead down on the fiberglass and shook. "You were right," she whispered. "Dad, you were right about all of it." Then she closed the case, sealed it, strapped it back against her ribs, and went to work on staying alive. Day one was arithmetic. She rationed nothing because she had nothing. She had a mouthful of rainwater from a squall that lasted 90 seconds, and she caught it in the blanket, and it tasted like plastic and salt, and it was the best thing she'd ever swallowed. She talked to keep her mind moving. Name: Emily Rose Carter. Age: 34. Occupation: she stopped there every time because the honest answer had gotten complicated somewhere around year 6. Occupation, she said again louder. Liar, she answered. Professional liar. 4 months of it. Day 2 was the hallucinations. They came in the afternoon and they were not dramatic, and that was what frightened her. She had read about this. She had studied it. She knew that the brain deprived long enough does not scream. It gets friendly. It gets warm. It sits down next to you and starts a nice conversation, and that's how it kills you. She heard a helicopter that wasn't there. She raised her arm to wave and got it halfway up before she caught herself. "There's no rotor wash," she said out loud. "There's no rotor wash, Emily. You'd feel it on the water. It's not real." She put her arm down. 10 minutes later, she heard her father's voice, and this time she didn't argue with it. "You should have stayed home," he said. "You should have come home," she said. "That's not fair, Em." "None of it's fair." Her voice cracked. Her throat felt like it was full of broken glass. "You knew. You knew what they were doing, and you let them tell me you were dead, and I believed it. I believed it for 12 years. Do you know what that does to a person?" He didn't answer. Hallucinations rarely answer the hard ones. "I identified a coffin," she said. "I was 22 years old, and they gave me a folded flag, and I said, 'Thank you.' I said, 'Thank you, Dad.'" The ocean moved under her. "Don't do that," she told herself. "Don't do that now." She bit down on the inside of her cheek until she tasted blood, and the pain cleared her head, and she made herself recite the names in the notebook from memory. All 11 of them. First name, last name, rank, date, position. When she got to the end, she started over. That was day 2. Day 3, she stopped being able to feel her legs, and she stopped being able to make spit, and her tongue had swollen enough that talking hurt, and she talked anyway. "Which way is the mainland?" she said. Nobody answered. "Which way is the mainland?" she said again, and it came out as a rasp, and she realized she was asking because she was planning, and she was planning because some part of her still believed she was getting out. She laughed then. It was a terrible sound. "You're insane," she told herself. "You know that you are genuinely insane." Then she found Polaris again because the sun had gone down, and she fixed it over her left shoulder, and she held on. 35 miles away at 4:11 in the morning, a 26-year-old radar technician named Petty Officer Danny Ruiz was 3 hours into a shift he had already stopped caring about. "Guardian, this is Ruiz. I've got a hit." "Say again." "I've got a heat signature, bearing 27011 miles. The watch officer didn't look up. "It's a whale." "It's not a whale." "Ruiz." "Sir, whales don't hold position for 4 minutes. That got him a look. Lieutenant Commander Adam Sorensen crossed the compartment and leaned over the display, and the shape sitting there was small and weak, and it wasn't moving with the current the way debris moves with the current. It was holding. Size. "Small, sir. Real small. Point of a heat source, not a mass." "Temperature." Ruiz swallowed. 92.4. The compartment went very quiet. "Say that number again." 92.4, sir. Give or take." Sorensen straightened up. "That's a person." "Sir, we haven't got a distress call. There's no beacon, no EPIRB, no—" "I know what there isn't." Sorensen was already reaching for the handset. "Get Hayes up here." Commander Michael Hayes had been in special operations for 25 years, and had learned to wake up all at once without confusion the way you learn to do when confusion has a body count. He looked at the screen for 6 seconds. Who's on the water? Reed's team's up, sir. Then Reed's team goes. Sir, Sorensen kept his voice low. There's no report. Nothing missing, nothing overdue, no mayday in 72 hours anywhere in this box. Whatever that is, it isn't supposed to be there. Hayes looked at him. Adam, he said, in 25 years, I have never once been called to something that was supposed to be there. Jackson Reed had pulled 91 people out of the water in his career, and 43 of them had already been dead when he got there, and he had a rule about it, and the rule was this: you assume it's a body until it argues with you. He went off the platform at 4:31. The cold hit him like a door slamming. He surfaced, cleared his mask, and swam, and behind him the searchlight swung across the water and found nothing, and swung back and found nothing. Reed, 40 meters, you're 2 o'clock. He swam. At 20 meters, he saw it, a pale rectangle in the black low in the water, and something on top of it that didn't have a shape yet. At 10 meters, the something had a shape. At 5 meters, Jackson Reed stopped swimming. Because it was a woman with her arm locked through a broken cleat, and her skin was burned and split, and her lips were black, and she was not moving at all. And he thought, with the flat certainty of a man who had been right about this 43 times, that he was about to touch a corpse. Guardian Reed, I've got a body. He reached out and put 2 fingers against her throat. Emily Carter opened her eyes. Jackson Reed made a sound he was embarrassed about for years afterward. Reed, say again. He couldn't say again. He was looking at her and she was looking at him, and her eyes were tracking. Not glassy, not gone, tracking. Her mouth moved. Nothing came out. Hey, he said. Hey, ma'am, don't talk. Don't talk, okay? I've got you, you're okay. She tried again. He leaned in and put his ear next to her mouth and heard 4 words come out on the last of somebody's air. Which way is the mainland? Jackson pulled back and stared at her. What? Mainland, she rasped. Which way? Ma'am, listen to me. Do you understand where you are right now? Yes. Her eyes closed and opened, slow, deliberate. Do you, Guardian? Jackson's voice came out strange. Guardian Reed. Correction. She's alive. There was a pause on the radio that lasted about 1.5 seconds. Reed confirmed. Confirming a live survivor, 1 female adult conscious, and he stopped. He looked at her and oriented. She's oriented, Guardian. She's asking me for a bearing. She's asking you for a what? Jackson got his arm under her shoulders and she made a small sound, the first sound of pain she'd made, and it was almost nothing. East, he told her. Mainland's east, 35 miles. Emily Carter closed her eyes. 35, she whispered. I was off by 4. And then she went out. They got her onto the deck at 4:52, and by 4:53 the corpsman was calling numbers that made no sense. Core temp 91.8, pulse 48. 48, sir. Hayes crouched next to her. He'd seen dehydration. He'd seen exposure. He'd carried men off mountains who looked better than this and hadn't made it to the pad. How long, he said. Sir, how long has she been out there? The corpsman looked at her hands. Her fingertips were gone to the quick, and the skin on her forearm had a pattern burned into it in the exact shape of a fractured cleat. Sir, based on the sun damage alone, I'd say 72 hours, minimum. That's not possible. No, sir, the corpsman agreed. It isn't. They ran the IV at 5:04, and that was the moment everything on the USS Guardian quietly changed. Hospital corpsman second class Tyler Boone had a line in her arm and was reaching for the tape when a hand, a burned, cracked, ruined hand with no fingernails, left closed around his wrist. Boone froze. Emily's eyes were half open. Too fast, she said. Boone blinked. Ma'am. Rate. Her voice was barely there. She had to stop between words. Drop the rate. Ma'am, you're severely dehydrated and we need to... Sodium. Her jaw worked. She swallowed nothing. 3 days. Correct me that fast and you'll put me in a seizure before you put me in a bed. The compartment stopped. Jackson Reed, standing at the hatch with a towel still around his neck and his gear still dripping, felt something cold move up the back of his skull that had nothing to do with the water. Boone looked up at Hayes. Hayes looked at the woman on the table. Drop the rate, Hayes said. Sir, drop the rate, Boone. Boone dropped the rate. Emily let go of his wrist and her hand fell back, and she said so quietly that only Boone heard it, "Thank you. Sorry, that was rude." Boone stared at her. "Ma'am," he said, "you have been in the Pacific Ocean for 3 days." "I know. You just corrected my infusion rate." "I know. Who are you?" Emily Carter didn't answer. Hayes stepped forward and put himself where she could see him without turning her head, because turning her head was going to hurt, and he had already decided he didn't want to hurt her yet. "Ma'am, I'm Commander Michael Hayes. You're aboard a United States Navy vessel. You're safe." Her eyes came to him. "Am I?" she said. It wasn't a question. That was the thing. She said it like a man checking a lock. Hayes felt his own instincts wake up all the way for the first time in about 4 years. "You are," he said carefully. "Can you tell me your name?" "Nothing." "Ma'am, I need a name." "Are we underway?" "Ma'am, are we underway, Commander?" Hayes glanced at Sorensen. Sorensen said nothing. "We're holding position," Hayes said. "Don't." "Excuse me." Emily's hand moved. It took her 3 seconds to get it 4 inches. Her fingers found the edge of her jacket where something hard sat under the fabric, and she pressed her palm flat over it, and something in her face changed for the first time since they'd pulled her out of the water. "Don't hold position," she said. "Please." "Why not?" "Because they'll come back to check." The silence after that was total. Hayes crouched down until his eyes were level with hers. "Who will?" he said. Emily Carter closed her eyes. "Ma'am, who will come back to check?" Her breathing changed. Boone's hand went to her wrist. "Sir, she's crashing." "Who, ma'am?" "Sir, she's crashing back up, back up." Hayes stood and got out of the way and watched them work on her, and he watched her hand, even unconscious, even gone, stay flat and locked over whatever was under that jacket. And he thought, "I have seen that exact grip before. I have seen it on men who were carrying something they'd already decided to die for." "Commander?" Sorensen was at his shoulder. "Sir, what do you want to do?" "Get us moving." "Sir, we don't have a heading." "Then pick one." Hayes was already walking. "Anyone, just don't sit still." At 6:20 a.m., a SEAL operator named Cole Barrett went down on the deck. He didn't collapse. He just sat suddenly like a man who'd found a chair that wasn't there, and by the time anyone reached him, he'd gone gray under the tan. Barrett, hey." "I'm fine," Barrett said. "I'm fine, got up too fast." 20 minutes earlier, 20 minutes, Emily Carter had come around for 90 seconds, and in those 90 seconds, she had looked past Boone, past Hayes, past all of it, to a man across the compartment she had never met, and she had said one sentence: "Get that one out of the sun." Boone had said, "Ma'am," and she'd said, "The big one, left side. He's not sweating right." And then she'd gone under again, and Boone had stood there feeling like an idiot, and then Boone had gone and found Cole Barrett anyway, because something about the way she said it had gotten into his spine. He'd taken Barrett's temp at 6:04. He'd started cooling him at 6:07. At 6:20, when Barrett sat down on the deck, Boone was already there with an ice sheet and a line, and Barrett's core hit 103 and stopped climbing, and it stopped climbing because of a woman who had been unconscious in the Pacific Ocean 40 minutes earlier and had diagnosed him from across a room without touching him. Jackson Reed was there for all of it. He found Hayes on the bridge wing at 6:41, and he didn't ask permission to speak. "Sir, that woman just called Barrett's heat casualty 16 minutes before he dropped." "I heard." "Sir, she called it from a table, lying down, with a line in her arm." "I heard Reed." "Sir, I've been doing this 11 years. Jackson's hands were shaking and he wasn't cold. "I've been doing this 11 years, and I couldn't have called that. Boone couldn't have called that. She called that." Hayes didn't turn around. "What do you want me to tell you, son?" "I want you to tell me who we just pulled out of the water." "So do I." "Sir, Reed." Hayes turned around. "In the last 2 hours, that woman has corrected a corpsman's infusion rate, diagnosed a heat casualty across a compartment, given me a distance to shore that was accurate inside 4 miles, and asked me, Reed, from a table with a needle in her, not to hold position, because someone might come back to check." Jackson's jaw tightened. "And there's no report," Hayes said. "No mayday, no missing vessel, no overdue crew, nothing. In 72 hours in this entire operating area, nobody has reported losing a single human being." "Then how is she out here?" "That," Hayes said, "is the only question that matters." They found the case at 7:15. Boone was cutting away what was left of her jacket, and his scissors hit something that wasn't fabric, and he stopped, and he called it out, and Hayes came down himself. It was a waterproof case, hard-sided no bigger than a paperback book strapped against her ribs, with a length of webbing she had cut from her own life vest. Hayes looked at the strap for a long moment. "She cut that," he said. "Sir, that's vest webbing. She cut her own flotation apart to keep this on her body." Hayes's voice had gone very flat. She had a choice between float and this, and she chose this. Nobody said anything. Hayes opened it. There was no wallet. There was no ID. There was no money, no phone, no key, no photograph, nothing a human being carries when they intend to be found by anyone who might ask their name. There was a notebook. Hayes turned it over in his hands. It was small, cheap, waterlogged at the corners and dry everywhere else. He opened it. Coordinates. Page after page of coordinates in a tight, fast hand with dates beside them. And names. 11 names, and next to each name a rank, and next to each rank a date. And every one of those dates was inside the same 11-week window 12 years ago. Hayes stood there on the deck of his own ship and felt the temperature go out of his body because he knew the third name on the list. He had known him. He had shaken that man's hand in a hangar in Coronado a lifetime ago, and he had gone to the memorial, and he had stood there in his dress blues and believed every single word they told him. "Sir," Sorensen said. "Sir, what is it?" Hayes didn't answer. "Sir." "Get her stable," Hayes said. His voice didn't sound like his own. "Whatever it takes. I don't care what it takes. Get her stable and get her awake." "Sir, what's in the book?" Hayes closed it. "Nothing that should exist," he said. She came around for the last time that morning at 8:02. Hayes was sitting beside her. He had sent everyone else out except Boone and Reed, and he had the notebook in his lap, and he had been sitting there for 45 minutes, not reading it, just holding it the way you hold something you already know is going to cost you. Emily opened her eyes. The first thing she looked at was his lap. "You opened it," she said. "Yes." Her eyes closed. Something went out of her face, not fear, not anger. Something worse. Something like a woman setting down a weight she'd carried so long that putting it down hurt more than the carrying. "Okay," she whispered. "Ma'am, okay. Ma'am, I need your name." Emily Carter opened her eyes and looked at the ceiling, and for the first time in 4 months, she told the truth to a stranger. "Emily," she said. "Emily Carter." Behind her, Jackson Reed didn't move. But Commander Michael Hayes came up out of that chair. Like the deck had bucked under him, and the notebook went out of his lap and hit the floor, and slid, and it landed open face up on the third name, Captain Daniel Carter. Hayes stood over her, with his fists closed and 25 years coming apart behind his eyes. "Say that again," he said. Emily turned her head. It cost her. He saw exactly what it cost her. "You knew him," she said. "Say your name again." "You knew my father." "Ma'am." "You were at the memorial." Her voice was nothing. It was air over sand. But her eyes did not move off his face. "Weren't you, Commander?" "You were at the memorial." Hayes couldn't speak. "So was I when Emily Carter said. "I was 22. They handed me a flag." She swallowed. "And then they handed me a lie." Hayes didn't pick the notebook up. He stood over her with his hands open at his sides and his mouth slightly apart. And Jackson Reed watched a man he'd served under for 3 years turn into somebody he'd never met. "Say the rest of it," Hayes said. "Commander." "Say the rest of it, ma'am." Emily Carter's tongue moved across what was left of her lips. It took her a while. Everything took her a while. "Arlington," she said. "Section 60, 11:40 in the morning. It rained until about 10 and then it stopped, and everybody said that was a good sign." Her eyes never left the ceiling. "There were 6 of you carrying it. You were on the left, second from the front." Boone stopped what he was doing. "You were second from the front," Emily said, "and you were the only one crying." Hayes made a sound. It wasn't a word. It was the sound a man makes when a wall he's been leaning on for 12 years turns out to be a curtain. "You were 22, he said. "I was 22. You had a black coat. It was too big for you. It was my mother's. You didn't say anything, the whole service. You didn't say one word to anybody, you just—" Hayes stopped. He put a hand on the edge of the table. "You just stood there." "They handed me a flag," Emily said, "and I said thank you." She turned her head and looked at him. Do you know what the worst part is? Commander, I meant it. I stood there and looked at 6 men who knew exactly what had happened to my father, and I said thank you, and I meant it. Hayes's jaw worked. I didn't know. I know you didn't. Ma'am, I did not know. Commander, her voice cracked in the middle of it. I have spent 12 years learning the difference between the people who lied and the people who were lied to. That's all I've done. That's my whole life. That's the only skill I have. She swallowed nothing. You were lied to. It's in your face. You wouldn't be standing there like that if you'd known. Hayes turned away from her. Jackson Reed, who had never in his life seen Michael Hayes turn away from anything, felt the floor of the world tilt about 4 degrees. Sir, not now, Reed. Sir, respectfully. I said not now. Sir, there's a woman on that table who's been in the water 3 days, and she just told you where you stood at a funeral. Jackson's voice came out harder than he meant it to. I'd like to know what's in that book. You would not. Sir, you would not read. Hayes turned around and his eyes were red and he did not care who saw it. I've read 4 pages. 4. And I'm already never going to be the same man I was at 4 o'clock this morning, so no, you would not. At 8:19, Sorensen's voice came over the intercom, and it had an edge on it that hadn't been there an hour ago. Commander to the bridge. Hayes didn't move. Commander to the bridge, sir, now. Emily's hand came off the table. It didn't go far. 2 inches, maybe 3. But it went towards him, and Hayes looked at it, and something about the sight of it, the missing nails, the split knuckles, the burned skin did something to him that the notebook hadn't managed. Go, she said. Ma'am, go, it's them. You don't know that. Commander. She was so tired that the word came apart in the middle. I've been waiting 3 days for you to be the one who found me. Please don't make me explain why. Hayes went. He was on the bridge in 90 seconds, and Sorensen didn't wait for him to get all the way through the hatch. Sir, we've got a surface contact, 12 miles closing. Course, ours. Hayes looked at the display. Say that again. They're on an intercept, sir, not a parallel, not a transit. They corrected twice in the last 11 minutes, and both corrections put them on us. Do we have an ID? Marine research vessel. Registry says Meridian Star, Homeport, Long Beach. And sir, I pulled the file, it's real. It's a real boat. It's got a real permit and a real crew list and a real charter. Then what's your problem? Sorensen looked at him. My problem, sir, is that they've had their AIS on all night, and 11 minutes ago they turned it off. The bridge went quiet. They turned it off, Hayes repeated. Yes, sir. Nobody turns that off out here. No, sir, nobody does. Hayes stood there for 4 seconds and did math that had nothing to do with numbers. Ruiz. Sir. Did anybody transmit anything about that woman? Anything at all? Ship to shore, ship to ship, a log entry, a medical request, anything. Ruiz's face changed color. Ruiz. Sir, at 5:40, we filed a routine casualty notification. It's automatic. It goes out whenever we take a survivor aboard. It's a form. It's 4 lines. It just says number of persons, condition, and what? Ruiz swallowed. And position, sir. Hayes closed his eyes. Sir, Sorensen said quietly, it's a routine form. It goes to a routine desk. There's nothing in it. It doesn't even have her name in it. We didn't have her name. It has our position in it, Hayes said. Yes, sir. And 41 minutes after we sent it, a boat that has been sitting quiet all night turned off its transponder and came at us. Nobody answered him. Hayes opened his eyes. Get us to 20 knots. Sir, heading east, straight at the beach. I don't care about the exercise. I don't care about the box. I want land under my keel, and I want it soon. Sir, I have to log a deviation. Then log it. Log every word of it. I want a paper trail so long that when this ends, there is not one single human being on this planet who can pretend it didn't happen. Hayes was already moving. And Sorensen, nothing else goes out. Not a form, not a request, not a birthday message to somebody's mother. This ship is dark until I say otherwise. Sir, I know exactly what that is. He was back below at 8:34, and by then Emily Carter had a bigger problem than a boat. Boone met him at the hatch and his voice was low and fast. Sir, I need a minute. Is she awake? Sir, listen to me. I need a minute. Hayes stopped. Her left hand shattered, Boone said. Metacarpals 2, 3, and 4. It's been broken at least 72 hours. It's untreated. It's been in salt water for 3 days. Okay. Sir, you're not hearing me. Boone's hands were shaking. He was 24 years old. She's been holding herself onto a piece of hull for 3 days with one arm because the other one doesn't work. She never mentioned it. She corrected my drip rate. She called Barrett's heat casualty from across a room. She gave you a distance to shore inside 4 miles. And the entire time she's been lying there with 3 broken bones in her hand, and she has not said one word about it. Hayes looked past him at the woman on the table. How bad? It's not a break, sir. It's a crush. That's an impact injury. Something hit that hand or that hand hit something and it didn't happen in the water. Hayes went in and sat down. Emily's eyes opened. Your hand, he said. It's fine. Ma'am, it's fine, Commander. You have 3 broken bones in your hand. 4, Emily said. He got 4. Hayes sat very still. He said. Emily's eyes closed. Ma'am, who broke your hand? I need you to understand something first. Who broke your hand, Commander? His name. Hayes leaned in. Ma'am, I have a boat 12 miles off my stern that just went dark and came at me, and I have a woman on my table with a crushed hand and no ID and a notebook full of dead men I served with, and you are going to give me a name right now or I swear to God. Marcus Vale. The room stopped. Say it again, Hayes said. Marcus Vale. Jackson Reed spoke from the hatch, and his voice sounded like it was coming from underwater. Sir, I know that name. Hayes didn't turn around. Sir. Jackson took a step in. Sir, that's Vale ran the contractor package out of Diego Garcia in 13. He briefed us. He briefed my chief. That man stood in a room and briefed us. I know, Hayes said. Sir, he's not. I know, Reed. Emily's eyes came open and she looked at Jackson Reed for a long moment. What's your name? She said. Reed, ma'am. Jackson Reed. You're the one who found me. Yes, ma'am. You said ma'am about 9 times in the first 10 seconds. Jackson blinked. Yeah, probably. Yes, ma'am. I heard every one of them. Something moved at the corner of her mouth that on a face with lips would have been a smile. I want you to know I heard every one of them. I'd stopped believing anybody was going to say anything to me again. Jackson Reed had to look at the floor for a second. Ma'am, permission to ask you something. You're allowed to just ask petty officer. Chief, sorry. How did you stay on that hull for 3 days with one hand? Emily looked at the ceiling. I didn't, she said. I stayed on it with my elbow. My hand didn't do anything but hurt. At 8:51, she started talking, and she talked for 40 minutes, and Hayes had a recorder running the whole time because he had decided somewhere around 8 in the morning that he was going to burn his career down, and he wanted it documented. 4 months, Emily said. I was aboard 4 months. Aboard what? The Meridian Star. Hayes's pen stopped. You were on that boat. I was their medic. You were, I was hired in March. Ship's medic marine research vessel 6-month contract $41,000. She had to breathe between sentences now. I had references. They were real references. I've been a paramedic for 11 years, Commander. That part's not a lie. That part's never been a lie. I just didn't tell them why I applied. Why did you apply? Because in February, a man in Oxnard sold me a name for $800. What name? Marcus Vales. Hayes set the pen down. Ma'am, I want you to understand what you're telling me. You are telling me you spent 4 months undercover on a hostile vessel. No. Ma'am. No, Commander, I'm not telling you that. Her voice sharpened and it cost her, and she did it anyway. Undercover means somebody sent you, somebody trained you, somebody's got a file and a plan and a phone number you can call when it goes bad. She turned her head. Nobody sent me. There's no file. There's no phone number. I'm a paramedic from San Diego with a dead father and $800 worth of a name, and I got on that boat because there was nobody else who was ever going to get on that boat. Nobody said anything. So no, Emily said. I wasn't undercover. I was just there. Hayes picked the pen back up because his hand needed something to do. What did you find? Nothing. For 4 months, I found nothing. I ran the sick bay. I handed out seasickness patches. I stitched a deckhand's thumb, and I found nothing. And I started to think maybe I was crazy. Maybe I'd made 12 years of it up. Maybe the man in Oxnard just wanted $800. Her breathing went uneven. Do you know how much of my life I've spent hoping I was wrong? I wanted to be wrong. I'd have given anything to be wrong. Wrong meant my father was just dead. Wrong meant I could stop. What changed June 9th? What happened on June 9th? Emily was quiet for so long that Boone leaned in to check her pulse. He got hurt, she said. Who did? Vale. He caught his forearm on a winch. It wasn't serious. 11 stitches. Her eyes closed. And he came into my sick bay at 2 a.m. because he didn't want the crew to see him hurt. And he sat down on my table and he let me put 11 stitches in his arm and he talked to me the entire time. About what? About nothing. The weather, his knee. He's got a bad knee. She swallowed. And then Commander, at the very end when I was cutting the last suture, he looked at me and he said, "You've got good hands. My old man had hands like that." And he smiled at me. Hayes waited. And I smiled back, Emily said. Her voice broke in half. I smiled back at this man who killed my father. I sat there and I stitched his arm and I made small talk about his knee and I smiled at him. And I did it well and he never knew. And I went back to my rack afterward and I put a towel in my mouth so nobody would hear me. Jackson Reed turned around and faced the bulkhead. "Ma'am," Hayes said quietly, "how did you know his arm?" His arm. The scar. Emily opened her eyes. There was an old scar under the new cut. Surgical, clean, 4 inches on our side with a plate under it. That's a specific repair, Commander. That's not a boat injury. That's a fragmentation repair, done fast, done by somebody good, done in a field hospital. She stopped. And there was a date tattooed above it. A date. A date, Emily said. The date they told me my father died. Hayes stood up. He walked 4 steps, stopped, and stood there with his back to her. "Sir," Boone said, "give me a second." "Sir, are you?" "Give me a second, Boone." The compartment was silent for 11 seconds. Then Hayes turned around and his eyes were wet and his voice was absolutely level. Why would a man tattoo the date of a mission he once buried on his own arm? "That's what I asked myself," Emily said. "For 9 days. 9 days I lay in that rack and asked myself that, and I could only come up with 2 answers. Which are, either he's proud of it," she looked at him, "or he was there and it broke him and he wanted it on his skin because he couldn't get it out of his head. And I didn't know which. I still don't know which. And Commander, I'm going to tell you the truth. I don't care. I don't care if it broke him. It didn't break him enough to stop him." At 9:29, Sorensen's voice came down again. "Sir, contacts at 9 miles and matched our speed." Hayes closed his eyes. "Say the second part again." "They matched our speed, sir. Exactly. 20 knots. Sir, that's a research boat. It shouldn't do 20. It shouldn't do 16. "It's not a research boat," Emily said from the table. Every man in the compartment looked at her. "It's got a hull rated for 28, she said. "I read the plate in the engine room in my second week. 28 knots on a vessel that spends 4 months a year taking water samples." Her mouth moved. "Ask yourself what a marine research vessel needs 28 knots for, Commander, and then ask yourself why nobody in 11 years of permits has ever asked." Hayes hit the intercom. "Sorensen, what's our best?" 22, sir, and I don't love it." "Then we're not outrunning them." "No, sir." "How long?" A pause. "At that closure, 3 hours. Maybe less if they push it." Hayes let go of the intercom. Then he did something that Jackson Reed would tell people about for the rest of his life. He pulled a chair over, sat down next to a woman he'd known for 5 hours, and asked her a question the way you ask a colleague. "Ma'am, in your professional opinion, what does he do when he catches us?" Emily didn't hesitate. "Nothing. Nothing. He comes alongside. He's polite. He's very, very polite. Commander, you have no idea how polite that man is. He tells you he's been searching for a crew member lost overboard. 3 days ago, he apologizes for the transponder. He says it's been faulty since April, and he's got the maintenance log to prove it, and he will have the maintenance log, and it'll be dated April. And then he asked for his medic back." The compartment went cold. "He's not going to fight you," Emily said. "He's never once in his life had to fight anybody. He's just going to stand on your deck and with a crew list with my name on it, and a contract with my signature on it, and a story about a woman who went into the water in a storm, and he's going to be so reasonable and so sad and so grateful you found me, And Commander, here's the part that matters. Every word of it is true. I did sign that contract. I was his medic. I did go into the water. She looked at him. He doesn't have to lie. That's why he's still alive. He never has to lie. Hayes sat there. Then what do I have, he said. You have 4 months of me not being able to prove a single thing, Emily said. In a notebook you're going to have a very hard time explaining how you got. Ma'am, and you have one other thing. She was fading. Boone had a hand on her wrist and was watching numbers do something he didn't like. You have the only thing he's ever been afraid of, which is me awake. At 9:44, Cole Barrett came into the compartment and stood at the foot of the table like a man at a door he wasn't sure he was allowed through. Ma'am, Emily's eyes opened. You're the one who wasn't sweating, right? She said. Barrett let out a breath that was almost a laugh and almost not. Yes, ma'am. How's your core? 99, ma'am. They got it down. Drink something anyway. You'll feel fine at 99 and you'll drop again at 1400. Everybody drops at 1400. Barrett stood there. Ma'am, I've got 3 kids. Emily didn't say anything. That's it. That's all I came down here to say. I've got 3 kids, and I sat down on that deck and I thought I got up too fast. His voice went somewhere. And Boone says if you hadn't called it, I'd have been at 106 before anybody looked twice at me. You'd have been fine. No, ma'am, Barrett said. I wouldn't have. He came around the table and he looked at her ruined hands and he didn't touch them. You'd been in the water for 3 days, he said, and you spent the first 90 seconds you were awake looking at me. Emily Carter turned her face away, and Jackson Reed, standing at the hatch, watched a woman who had not cried when a man threw her into the Pacific Ocean, who had not cried through a crushed hand, who had not cried through Arlington, or the flag, or the lie, watched her lie there and come apart quietly because a stranger with 3 kids said thank you. Get out, she whispered. Ma'am, please, all of you, please get out. They got out. Hayes went up to his cabin at 10:02 and read the notebook the way he should have read it 4 hours earlier, front to back slowly with a legal pad next to him. 11 names. He knew 3 of them. He'd carried one of them. The coordinates were the thing that broke him. Because they weren't random, they marched, page after page, month after month, the same box of ocean tightening, the way a man tightens a search when he's getting warm, and every entry was dated and the dates ran 12 years, and the handwriting was a 22-year-old's. And then it wasn't. It got smaller, it got faster, it got harder. And Hayes sat there and watched a girl turn into whatever was lying on the table below him, 1 page at a time. Then he got to the back, and a page was gone. Not lost, not water damaged. Cut out with something sharp close to the spine clean. Hayes went down the ladder so fast he nearly took Boone off his feet. Wake her up. Sir, absolutely not, sir. Her sodium's... Boone, wake her up. Sir, if I push her right now, I could put her into... Then don't push her. Just say her name. Boone said her name. Emily's eyes came open at 10:31, and Hayes was holding the notebook open at the back, and she looked at the empty stitching where a page had been, and she said before he could ask, yes. Where is it? Commander. Ma'am, there's a page missing out of the only piece of evidence on this planet, and I want to know where it is. I cut it out on the second night. With what? With the aluminum. Hayes stared at her. You cut a page out of that book, he said slowly, while you were floating in the Pacific Ocean with one working hand. Yes. Why? Because I did the math. Her voice was almost nothing now. Boone was watching her rate and shaking his head at nobody. Second night, I did the math on my own body and I came out at 4 days, maybe 5, and I knew I wasn't going to be conscious for the end of it. And I thought if they find me, they find the book. And if the wrong people find me, they find the book. So where is it? Emily Carter looked at Jackson Reed. Chief, she said. Ma'am, when you found me, what was I holding? Jackson went very still. Your arm was through the cleat, he said. Other hand. Ma'am, your other hand was... He stopped. Say it. Your other hand was closed, Jackson said. It was closed in a fist. It was closed so hard I couldn't get it open on the boat, and I figured it was cold. I figured it was rigor coming early. I've seen that. I thought that's what it was. It wasn't rigor. Ma'am, I never got it open. Jackson's voice had gone thin. Boone, did you ever get that hand open? Boone had gone white. It's the broken one, he said. Sir, it's the broken hand. I never opened it. I splinted it. I splinted it closed because I thought, I thought the position was the injury. I thought that's how it's set. Hayes turned around. Open it. Sir, if there's something in there and it's been in there 3 days against a crush injury. Boone, sir, I could take her fingers off. Open the hand, Emily said. Boone looked at her. Sailor, she said. Look at me. I'm the medic. It's my hand. Open it. It took him 4 minutes and she made no sound at all. And at 10:47, hospital corpsman second class Tyler Boone peeled Emily Carter's fingers back off her own palm and lifted out a square of paper the size of a playing card folded 8 times pressed into her flesh so long and so hard that the ink had printed itself backward on her skin. Nobody moved. Hayes took it. His hands weren't steady. He unfolded it once, twice, 3 times, 4, and it came apart into a page with 1 coordinate on it and 1 date, and he looked at the date, and Michael Hayes stopped breathing. Ma'am, Emily's eyes were closing. Ma'am, this date is wrong. No, it isn't. Ma'am, this is 6 days ago. Yes, this is 6 days ago. Hayes was standing over her with the page in his fist. This is a position and a date from 6 days ago, and ma'am, this is not your handwriting. Emily Carter opened her eyes one last time that morning. No, she said, it isn't. Whose is it? Emily didn't answer. Ma'am, whose handwriting is on this page? Commander, her pressure's dropping. Whose? Sir, I'm telling you she cannot. Boone, so help me God, if you tell me one more time what she can't do. Hayes had the page open in both hands, and he was holding it the way men hold things they're afraid of. This woman held a piece of paper inside a crushed hand for 3 days in salt water. Do not stand there and tell me what she can't do. Boone shut his mouth. Emily's eyes came open again, and they came open slower than they had an hour ago, and everybody in that compartment saw it. Give it to me, she said. Ma'am. Commander, give me the page. Hayes put it in her right hand, the whole one, and her fingers closed around it, and she brought it up in front of her face and held it there for a long moment, and then she started to breathe wrong. Ma'am, I'm fine. You're not fine. I'm fine, Commander. Her hand shook. The paper made a sound. I haven't seen it in 12 years. Hayes went very still. Seen what? The 7. What? He crosses his 7s. Emily's voice came apart on the last word, and she pulled it back together with everything she had left. He lived in Germany for 2 years when he was a lieutenant, and he came home crossing his 7s, and he never stopped. My mother used to make fun of him for it. Every check he ever wrote, every birthday card. Her thumb moved across the paper. It's the only thing about him I could never get out of my head. Not his face, his 7s. Nobody breathed. Ma'am, Hayes said. Say it out loud. Commander, say it out loud because I am not going to be the one who says it. Emily Carter lowered the page. It's my father's handwriting, she said. Captain Daniel Carter wrote that 6 days ago. Jackson Reed sat down. He didn't decide to. His legs did it for him, and he ended up on a stool by the bulkhead with his hands hanging between his knees, and he said to nobody, That's not possible. Chief, that's not possible, ma'am. That man's been dead 12 years. I know. There's a headstone. My chief was at that funeral, ma'am. There's a headstone in Arlington with that man's name cut into it. I know, Emily said. I paid for the flowers on it every March for 11 years. The compartment was silent for 6 full seconds. Then Hayes said quietly, Where did you get that page? June 18th. Ma'am, where did you get it? It was under my pillow. Hayes closed his eyes. On the Meridian Star, he said. On the Meridian Star, in my rack. In a compartment with a door I locked every single night for 4 months because I'm not stupid. Commander, whatever else I am, I have never once been stupid. Her voice was climbing and her monitor was climbing with it. I locked that door. I checked it twice and I came off a 14-hour shift on June 18th and I lifted my pillow and there was a page in my father's handwriting sitting on my rack folded in half with a coordinate on it and a date 6 days out. A date 6 days out. It hadn't happened yet. Emily turned her head and looked at him. Commander, do you understand what I'm telling you? He gave me a position and a time in the future. He was telling you where to be. He was telling me where to be? Hayes put both hands on the edge of the table and leaned on them. And you went. Of course I went. Ma'am, what was I supposed to do? Something ugly and raw came up out of her, and she didn't stop it. 12 years, Commander. 12 years of coordinates that went nowhere, and names that turned into nothing, and a man in Oxnard who took $800 off me because he could see what I was. 12 years of everybody I loved telling me to let it go, and my mother dying in a room with me, still not letting it go, and me standing at her bed making promises about closure that I knew were lies while I was saying them. Her breath caught. And then a page in his hand with his sevens on it. What was I supposed to do, sir? Go back to work. Hayes didn't answer because there was no answer. So I went, Emily said. I got up at 0200 on the 24th and I took the tender and I went to that position and I sat there in the dark by myself for 40 minutes and I waited for my father. And Emily Carter looked at the ceiling and Marcus Vale showed up instead, she said. At 11:02, the intercom came alive and Sorensen's voice had lost all of its edges. It had gone flat and flat was worse. Sir Meridian Star is hailing us. Hayes didn't move for a second. On what? Bridge to Bread, sir, channel 16. In the clear. Sir, they have got their transponder back on. It came on 40 seconds ago. It's broadcasting clean name registry, everything. They turned it back on. Yes, sir. They ran dark for 2 hours and now they want to be seen. Yes, sir. Emily made a sound. It might have been a laugh. He's building a record, she said. Hayes turned to her. Say that again. He's building a record, Commander. Right now. Everything from this second forward is going to be perfect. Transponder on. Voice on 16 in the clear recorded by every ship inside 40 miles. He's not hiding from you. Her eyes closed. He's making witnesses. Of what? Of a good man doing everything right. Hayes hit the intercom. Sorensen, patch it down here. Sir, are you sure? Patch it down here and record every word. There was a click, and then a voice came into that compartment, and Emily Carter's whole body changed. It wasn't dramatic. That was the thing Jackson Reed never got over. She didn't flinch. She didn't cry out. Every muscle in her simply went rigid at once, the way a body goes when it hears a sound it learned to be afraid of before it learned words. USS Guardian, this is motor vessel Meridian Star. Good morning, sir. My name is Marcus Vale. I'm the operations director aboard. The voice was warm. It was the warmest voice in the world. Guardian, I want to start by apologizing for our transponder. It's been intermittent since April. We've got a work order in with the yard. I can send you the log if it's useful. I know how that looks, and I don't want it hanging over the conversation. Hayes looked at Emily. Emily's eyes were open and fixed on the overhead, and her lips were moving. She was saying it with him. Sir, Vale said, I'm going to be straight with you. 6 days ago, we lost a crew member overboard. Emily's lips moved. We've been searching ever since, Vale said. On our own without a lot of help, and I'll be honest with you, sir, I'd about run out of hope. Then we caught a casualty notification out of your position this morning. 1 survivor, female. And Commander, I have not slept in 6 days, so if I sound like a mess, that's why. Ma'am, Boone whispered. Ma'am, how are you doing that? Emily didn't stop. I know exactly what this looks like, Vale said. Boat goes quiet, boat turns up. I'd be suspicious too. So here's what I'd like to do. I'd like to send you our crew manifest, her contract, her medical file, her next of kin form, and our incident report, all of it right now unsolicited before you ask me for a single page of it. And then I'd like to ask you a question, sir, and then I'll get off your radio. The compartment did not make one sound. Is she alive? Marcus Vale said. And his voice broke. It broke perfectly. It broke the way a man's voice breaks when he's been up 6 nights and he finally has to say the thing out loud. And Jackson Reed, 11 years, 91 bodies, a man who had stopped being able to be fooled somewhere around year 4 felt his own throat close. Then he looked at the woman on the table with her hand in a splint and no fingernails, and he wanted to be sick. Guardian Meridian Star, sir, please. Is she alive? Hayes reached over and killed the speaker. Nobody said anything for a while. That, Hayes said finally, is the most frightening thing I have ever heard in my life. He's good, Emily said. Ma'am, that man is... He's not lying, Commander. That's what I keep trying to tell you. She was so tired. He did lose a crew member overboard. He has been searching. He has an incident report, and it's filled out correctly, and I bet my life it's dated the right day. Everything that man just said is true. He threw you off a boat. Yes. He broke your hand. Yes. Ma'am, how does a man do both? Emily turned her head. By deciding 12 years ago that he was going to be the one who never has to lie, she said. You have to understand him or he's going to walk out of this. He's not a criminal commander. He's an administrator. He's a man who arranges the world so the truth works for him. At 11:19, Sorensen came down himself and he had a tablet in his hand and his face was wrong. Sir, he sent it, all of it. 9 files 4 minutes ago. That was fast. Sir, it was ready. Sorensen's voice was strange. It was all sitting there ready to go. Sir, that packet was built before he ever keyed the mic. Show me the manifest. Sorensen didn't hand it over. Sorensen. Sir, give me the manifest. Sorensen gave him the tablet, and Hayes read it, and Hayes stopped. He read it again. He looked up. Ma'am, he said, what name did you use aboard that ship? Emily's eyes came open. What? What name, Hayes said. Did you sign that contract under Aaron Walsh? Say it slower. Aaron Walsh. Her voice had gone very quiet. I bought the license in December. It cost me $4,000, and it was the best fake I could find, and it held for 4 months. It held through a federal background check for the permit. Commander, it held. It says Carter. The world stopped. What? The manifest says Carter Emily R. Hayes was reading it, and his hands had started to shake. Ship's medic, hire date March 4th. Under notes, there's one line. Read it. Ma'am. Read it, Commander. Hayes read it. Next of kin, none surviving. See file. Emily Carter did not move. Boone was watching the monitor, and the monitor was doing something, and Boone said nothing because he had stopped being able to say anything. That's a mistake, Emily said. Ma'am, that's a commander. That's an error. Somebody in an office. Ma'am, this document is dated March 4th. No, March 4th, Hayes said, the day you were hired 4 months ago. Your real name is on your hire paperwork from the day you walked aboard. No. Ma'am. No. It came out of her with a force nobody in that compartment thought she still had, and her whole body came up off the table 3 inches before Boone got a hand on her chest. And then she was fighting him, one-handed, wrecked, and Boone was saying her name, and Jackson was across the room and she was still trying to get up. That's not, I checked. I checked everything. I read my own file. I read it in his office in week 6. I stood there in his office and I read my own file, and it said Walsh. It said Aaron Walsh. I saw it with my own. Ma'am, stop. I saw it. Emily. Jackson Reed had her shoulder, and he said it the way you say a name, not a rank. Emily, stop, stop. She stopped. She lay back down, and her breathing was terrible, and her eyes were open very wide, and she looked at the overhead for a long time. And when she spoke again, her voice had changed. It had gone small. He let me read a fake, she said. Nobody answered her. He kept the real one somewhere else, and he let me find a fake, and he watched me read it, and he let me walk out of that office thinking I'd gotten away with something. Her mouth moved without sound. Week 6, Commander. Week 6. Ma'am, he knew who I was in week 6. Ma'am, listen to me. He knew who I was on day 1. Emily Carter started to shake, and it wasn't the cold. March 4th. He wrote my real name on my hire paperwork on March 4th, and then he spent 4 months letting me think I was hiding. Why, Jackson said. Ma'am, why keep you on that boat 4 months if he knew he could have, ma'am, he could have done this the first week? Why would he? Emily's face came around, and Jackson Reed watched something arrive behind her eyes that he would think about at 3 in the morning for the rest of his natural life. Oh, she said, ma'am, oh God, ma'am, he wasn't hiding from me. Her voice was almost nothing. Commander, he wasn't hiding from me. I wasn't the thing he was after. I was never the thing he was after. She couldn't finish it. Hayes finished it for her. You were the lure, he said. The compartment went absolutely silent. 12 years, Hayes said slowly, and he was not talking to anybody. He was assembling it out loud because a man has to hear a thing to survive it. 12 years he's been looking for your father. 12 years and he can't find him. Because your father is a man who spent his entire career learning how not to be found by exactly this kind of man. Sir. So he stops looking. Hayes's voice was rising. He stops looking, Reed. He finds the one thing on this earth that Daniel Carter cannot walk past, and he puts her on his boat, and he keeps her there, and he waits. 4 months, Jackson said. 4 months of a daughter out at sea on a hostile deck alone. Hayes turned. How long could you have watched that chief knowing if it was yours? Jackson Reed didn't answer. 11 weeks, Hayes said. Vale gets 11 weeks and Daniel Carter breaks cover and slips a page under his own daughter's pillow because he can't stand it anymore. 12 years of discipline and it takes 11 weeks. He walked into it, Emily whispered. Ma'am, he walked into it because of me. Ma'am, listen. He was safe. She had started to cry and she didn't seem to know it. He was safe for 12 years. He was somewhere, he was alive. He was safe. And then I got on that boat and Commander, he saw me. He was close enough to put a piece of paper under my pillow. He was close enough to touch me and he didn't because he knew it was a trap and he did it anyway. Ma'am, he did it anyway because I was there. Her voice tore. I'm the reason. 12 years he stayed dead and I'm the reason he stopped. Emily. Hayes crouched down. It was the first time he'd used her name. Emily, listen to me. Don't. Listen to me. If a man puts my daughter on a boat to draw me out, I'm coming. There is no version of me that doesn't come. That's not a mistake he made. That's not something you did to him. Sir, that's the only decision a father can make, Hayes said. And you know it. You're just too tired to know it right now. Emily Carter put her good hand over her face and made a sound that wasn't crying, and everybody in that compartment looked somewhere else, and at 11:34, nobody on the USS Guardian said anything at all. At 11:41, Boone did his job because that's what he had, and what he found made him call Hayes back before Hayes made it up the ladder. Sir, I need you. Boone, sir, the page, the one from her hand. Boone was holding it in a glove and staring at it. Sir, it's not paper. What? It's not, sir. It's a paper. It's a out of that notebook, but there's something under the ink. Hayes came back. Say it plain. Sir, when she cut it out and folded it, it was against her palm for 3 days and her palm was bleeding and the blood went into the fiber. And that's, sir, that's why I'm seeing it. It's the wrong color where it shouldn't be. Where what shouldn't be? There's a second impression. Boone's hands were shaking so hard he had to set it down. Sir, somebody wrote something on palm of it. Not with ink, with a dry stylus, pressed hard. There's writing pressed into that page that has no ink on it at all, and I'm only seeing it because her blood filled the grooves. Hayes took it. He turned it toward the light. And Michael Hayes, 25 years, 4 wars, a man who had never once in his adult life sat down without deciding to sat down. What? Emily said. Ma'am, what does it say? Ma'am, I need you to tell an commander. She was crying and her voice was steel anyway, and it was the most frightening combination of things that Jackson Reed had ever heard in a human being. What does my father's page say? Hayes read it. He said, if they got you, don't fight him. Let him take you. He needs you alive, so be alive. That's not surrender. That's the mission. I'll come to you. I've always been coming to you. Don't be scared of the water. You were the only one of us who was ever any good in it, Dad. Emily Carter made no sound. There's more, Hayes said. Read it. Ma'am, read all of it. All of you. P.S. I watched you stitch his arm. You were good. Your mother would have been sick about it, and I have never in my life been prouder of anybody. The compartment broke. Boone turned around and put both hands on the bulkhead. Jackson Reed walked out and stood in the passageway with his back against the steel and his eyes shut. Cole Barrett, who had come down for nothing, for no reason, just to stand near her, put a hand over his mouth. And Emily Carter lay on that table and laughed. It was the worst sound any of them had ever heard. It was a laugh with 12 years in it. He was there, she said. Commander. He was in that sick bay. He was standing outside that door at 2 a.m. on June 9th, and he watched me put 11 stitches in the man who killed him, and he didn't come in. Emily. He didn't come in. She was laughing and the tears were running into her hair. Because if he came in, I'd have made a face, one face. That's all it takes. He knew that. He's known me since I was born. He knew I'd make a face, and he stood there and let me stitch that man's arm, and he walked away. She stopped laughing. That's my father, she said. That's exactly my father. He's been doing that my whole life. At 11:52, Sorensen's voice came down, and it was the last calm sentence anybody on that ship got for a long time. Sir, Meridian stars at 4 miles and slowing. Sir, they're launching a tender. Hayes came up out of the chair. Say again, they're putting a small boat in the water, sir. 2 men, and sir, they're hailing again. He's asking permission to come alongside. He's asking permission. Yes, sir, on 16, in the clear. He said, quote, I'm not coming aboard without your say-so, Commander, and I'll wait all day for it. Hayes stood there with his fist closed. Sir, Sorensen said, what do I tell him? Nothing. Sir, you tell him nothing and you get this ship to 22 knots and I don't care what it does to the plant. Commander? Emily's voice. Commander, don't. Hayes turned. Ma'am, that man is not setting foot. Let him come. Everything stopped. Say that again, Hayes said. Let him come alongside. Ma'am, have you lost your mind? Commander. She was gray. She was almost gone. She said it anyway. What do you have right now? What do you have that any court on this earth would look at twice? I have a notebook. You have a notebook you can't explain. Written by a woman who lied her way onto a boat under a fake identity containing names of classified operations she has no clearance to know. Emily's eyes burned. You have a hand you can't prove he broke. You have a story about a page under a pillow with no witnesses. And you have 4 months of me, sir. 4 months of me signing his contract, cashing his checks, and stitching his arm. Nobody spoke. You have nothing, Emily Carter said. I've had 12 years and I have nothing. That's why I'm still here. That's why he's still there. Then what do you want? I want him to say it. Hayes stared at her. Ma'am, he's never had to lie, Commander. Not once, 12 years. So let's make him. Her jaw set. Put him in a room with me, awake, on a Navy deck with your recorder running, and let him look at me and let him say the words crew member lost overboard to my face, and Commander, that's it. That's the whole thing. That's the first lie of his entire life. And if he doesn't say it, he'll say it. He has to. He built the record. He can't stop building it now. Hayes was quiet for a long moment. Ma'am, if he comes alongside and you're wrong, that man walks out of here with you in his boat in a signed contract that says he's entitled to. I know. He could take you. I know, Commander. Then why in God's name? Because my father told me not to fight him. Hayes stopped. Let him take you, Emily said. He needs you alive, so be alive. That's not surrender, that's the mission. Her chin came up. My father wrote that 6 days ago, knowing exactly what was coming. He's been 11 steps ahead of that man for 12 years. And the last thing he ever told me was, don't fight, let him come. I'll come to you. Her eyes closed. He said he's always been coming, she said. So let's find out. At 12:04, Marcus Vale's tender came alongside the USS Guardian, and Michael Hayes stood at the rail and watched it, and he had a recorder in his pocket and a corpsman at his shoulder, and every operator he had spread across that deck, pretending to have somewhere to be. At 12:06, Sorensen came running. He ran. He was a lieutenant commander and he ran. Sir, not now. Sir, we've got a second contact. Hayes turned. Where? Astern, sir. 2 miles. It came out of nothing, sir. It wasn't there. I've got it on visual before I've got it on anything else. What is it? Sir, it's a sailboat. Hayes stared at him. A what? A sailboat, sir. 40 feet. 1 man on deck. Sorensen's voice was cracking. Sir, he's not hailing. He's not squawking. There's no name on the transom, sir. I've got glass on it right now. And there's no name. Sorensen, what is a sailboat doing 35 miles? Sir, he came from the west. Hayes went cold. Say that again? He came from the west, Sorensen said. Sir, he's been sitting out there in the same box of ocean we pulled her out of. He's been there the whole time. Sir, he was there before we were. Below in a compartment with a locked hatch, Boone had a hand on Emily Carter's wrist, and the intercom was open because Hayes had left it open and Emily heard every word of it. And then a voice came on to channel 16. It was not warm. It was not polite. It was an old voice and it was tired and it was steady as a nail. Guardian, Guardian, this is the vessel 2 miles astern. I don't have a name for you and I'm not going to give you one. Boone's hand froze. I'm going to ask you a question, sir, and I'd take it as a kindness if you'd just answer it. Emily Carter's eyes opened. Do you have my daughter? She stopped breathing. Because I've been sitting out here for 6 days, the voice said. And Commander, I'm done. Emily's mouth moved. Nothing came out. Then something did. Dad, she said. Dad. It came out of her broken. It came out of her the way a word comes out of somebody who hasn't said it in 12 years and had stopped believing it was still a word. Then Emily Carter tried to stand up. Ma'am, no. She got her elbow under her. She got her shoulders off the table. She had a line in her arm and 3 broken bones in her hand and 72 hours of the Pacific Ocean in her tissue. And she got her shoulders off that table, and Boone put both hands on her chest and she fought him. Emily, stop it. Get off me. Emily, that's my father. She was crying and she wasn't slowing down, and Boone could not hold her, which was the part he never got over because he was 24 and 210 pounds, and he could not hold her. That's my father. 12 years. Get off me. Get off me. That's my father. Ma'am, you will die on this deck. Then I'll die on this deck. She got a foot down. Her leg didn't hold. It folded like paper, and she went down hard against the edge of the table, and the IV tore out of her arm, and Boone got an arm around her before she hit the steel, and she hung there and she kept trying. Chief, Boone was shouting. Chief, I need Reed. Jackson Reed came through that hatch and stopped dead. She was on the deck. Her hand was bleeding. The line was in her hair. And she was still trying to get up, still working her one good arm against the table leg, still going. And she looked up at him and said, Chief, please. Jackson Reed had spent 11 years learning not to make decisions with his chest. Boone, he said, get a chair. Chief, get her a chair and get that line back in her arm and get her a coat. Chief, her sodium is. Then bag it and carry it, Boone, but she's going topside. Jackson knelt down. Ma'am, look at me. You do not get to die on the ladder. You hear me? Not on the ladder. You've come 35 miles. Don't you dare quit at the ladder. Emily Carter laughed. It was wet and awful, and it was the first real one anybody had heard out of her. Deal, she said. Topside Michael Hayes was having the worst 4 minutes of his career, and he was having it in front of an audience. Marcus Vail's tender was at a rail. 2 men in it, Vail in the bow hands where everybody could see them, no weapon, no vest, wearing a windbreaker, and boat shoes, and the expression of a man who had come to collect a package. And 40 feet of unnamed sailboat was standing off the stern, with one old man on the deck, and Channel 16 was still open. And every ship inside 40 miles had just heard a voice ask if the United States Navy had his daughter. Hayes looked at Vail. Vail was looking at the sailboat. That was the thing Jackson Reed saw when he came up, and it was the only thing he needed. He'd been reading Men in Bad Places for over a decade, and he watched Marcus Vail look at that little sailboat, and he watched the warmth go out of that man's face like water out of a sink. It wasn't fear. Jackson had been braced for fear. What he got was worse. It was hunger. 12 years of hunger arriving all at once in a man who had never let one thing show in his life, and it lasted about a second and a half, and then it was gone, and the windbreaker and the boat shoes came back, and Marcus Vail smiled up at the rail. Commander Hayes, Mr. Vail. Sir, I'd like permission to come aboard. Denied. Sir. Mr. Vail, there's an aircraft carrier's worth of things I want to say to you, and not one of them requires you on my deck. That's fair. Vail nodded, slow, agreeable. That's completely fair, sir. Can I say one thing from here? You can say it on the record. I'd prefer it on the record. Vail put his hand flat on the tender's rail. Commander, you need to let that man come alongside. Hayes went still. Say that again. That boat behind you. Vail didn't look at it. You need to let him come alongside, and you need to do it in the next 10 minutes, because if you don't, he's going to go away. And Commander, if he goes away, nobody on this earth is ever going to find him again. I've been trying for 12 years. You'd have better luck with the ocean. Mr. Vail, I don't take direction from... I'm not directing you, sir. I'm begging you. And his voice did the thing again, the warm crack, the 6 sleepless nights thing. Please let him come. Hayes stared down at him. Why, Bahay, he said. Would a man who lost a crew member overboard care about a sailboat? And Marcus Vail looked up at Commander Michael Hayes and smiled the saddest smile Jackson Reed had ever seen on a human face. You've got her awake, he said. Don't you? Nobody answered him. Ah, Vail said softly. Good. That's good. He stopped. He actually put his hand over his mouth for a second. That's better than I hoped for, Commander, I'll be honest with you. Then the hatch opened behind Hayes. Boone came out backward, holding a bag of fluid over his head like a man carrying a torch. Jackson Reed came out with a chair, and between them, upright in a borrowed coat 3 sizes too big with a splinted hand and no fingernails, and a face the color of ash, walked Emily Carter. She walked. Boone had a hand under her arm, and Jackson had the chair a foot behind her the entire way, and she did not sit in it. She got to the rail. She put her good hand on it. She locked her elbow exactly the way she'd locked it through a fractured cleat for 3 days, and she stood there, and she looked down into that tender. Marcus Vale looked back up at her. For a long moment, neither of them said anything, and the whole deck of the USS Guardian stopped moving. Then Vale said, "Hey, Aaron, that's not my name." "No," Vale agreed. "It isn't." "Say it, Emily. Say all of it." "Emily Rose Carter," Marcus Vale said. "Born September 14th, daughter of Daniel. You've got your mother's mouth and your old man's hands, and I've known exactly who you were since about 11 o'clock in the morning on March 4th. Emily's knuckles went white on the rail. "4 months," she said. "4 months. You let me stitch your arm. You did a nice job. I smiled at you." It ripped out of her, and half the deck flinched, and Marcus Vale did not. "I know," he said. "I know you did, honey, and I want you to hear me say that I've thought about that every single night since, and I'm going to think about it every night I've got left. That's not nothing to me. I need you to know it isn't nothing to me. Don't you call me honey." "No, all right." Hayes stepped in. His hand was in his pocket and the recorder was running, and he had been waiting for this exact moment since 4 o'clock that morning. "Mr. Vale?" "Sir?" "For the record, on the 16th of this month, did you lose a crew member overboard from the motor vessel Meridian Star?" And there it was. The whole thing. 12 years of a woman's life folded down into one sentence in one man's mouth. Emily's eyes were burning holes in the top of his head. Boone had stopped breathing. Jackson Reed had his hand on his own thigh to keep it still. "Say it," Emily thought. "Say it. Say it, and it's over. One lie. That's all I've ever needed from you. One mittish." Marcus Vale looked up at the woman at the rail. "No," he said. The world came off its hinges. "Say again," Hayes said. "No, sir. I did not lose a crew member overboard." "Mr. Vale, I'd remind you that you are—" "I know exactly what I'm being, Commander, and I'd appreciate it if you'd let me finish before you start reading me things." Vale's voice never went up. Not once. "On the 16th of this month at approximately 02:40 in the morning, I broke Emily Carter's left hand against the rail of my vessel. I struck her in the face at least twice. I removed her flotation device. And then I picked her up and I threw her into the Pacific Ocean about 35 miles off Point Conception, and I sank her tender behind her, and I instructed my crew to log her as never having been aboard. Nobody on that deck moved." "That's all true," Vale said. "Every word. Ask me again and I'll say it again. Slower if your recorder's bad." Hayes's mouth opened. Nothing came out. And Emily Carter stood at that rail with her whole body shaking and said in a voice that had gone to pieces, "Go, why can't?" "Because I needed him to come." "Why?" "Because I've been screaming into a hole for 12 years, Emily." And that was the only time his voice moved. That was it. That was the whole crack in the man. Because there's not one door left on this planet I haven't knocked on. Because I have written it down and mailed it and filed it and testified to it in rooms where the recorder wasn't running, and every time it goes in a drawer, and the drawer goes in a building, and I go home. 12 years. And nobody, honey, nobody has ever once had to answer for it. Don't. And then I got a resume in March, Vale said, from a paramedic named Aaron Walsh. Emily's face came apart. And I sat in my office and I looked at that fake license, and it was a good one. It was a really good one. And I thought, he stopped. He looked at his own hands. I thought, there she is. There's the girl from the funeral in the coat that didn't fit. She's been chewing on this for a decade, same as me, and she's got no more idea what to do about it than I do. You used me. Yes. You used me as bait. Yes. You threw me in the ocean. Yes. Vale's head came up, and for the first time in the entire encounter, he was not warm, and he was not polite, and he was not anything but a man who had been awake for 12 years. Yes, I did, because he wasn't coming for 4 months of you being uncomfortable. He watched you scrub my sick bay for 4 months, and he didn't come. He watched you stitch my arm, and he didn't come. That man let you sit on my boat for 111 days, and he did not come, Emily. And I want you to sit with that a second because I did. He was protecting me. He was protecting himself. You son of a... So I took the last thing he had, Vale said. I threw his daughter in the water. And I want you to look at your own hand, honey, and I want you to look at your fingers, and then I want you to look at the fact that 6 days later, that man is sitting off this ship's stern, asking a Navy commander a question out loud on Channel 16 in the clear in front of everybody. He looked up at her. I got him in 6 days, he said. It only ever took the one thing. Emily Carter did not speak. I know what I am, Marcus Vale said quietly. I've known for a long time. You go ahead and arrest me, Commander. Right now. I take it as a kindness. Put the cuffs on and put me in a room and put me under oath. And sir, please put me in front of a judge. Because I have been trying to get somebody to put me under oath since 2013. And there is exactly one man alive who has spent 12 years making sure that never happens. He pointed without looking at the sailboat. And he's right there, Vale said. So bring him aboard, Commander. I'm begging you. Bring him aboard and let's all 4 of us find out what a man says when he can't leave the room. The silence on that deck went on for a very long time. Then Emily Carter said in a voice nobody recognized, Chief Reed, "Ma'am, bring my father in." "Ma'am, bring him in," she said, and she was looking at Marcus Vale and she wasn't blinking. "Because one of you is lying to me, and I've waited 12 years, and I would like to know which one today." Daniel Carter came aboard the USS Guardian without help. He was 61 years old and burned brown, and he had a beard gone white, and he came up that ladder like a man who'd come up 1,000 ladders, and when he got to the top, he did not look at Hayes and he did not look at Vale. He looked at his daughter, and Emily Carter, who had survived 3 days in the Pacific Ocean, who had stitched her father's killer's arm, who had stood at that rail and taken every word Marcus Vale had to give her without sitting down. Emily Carter looked at her father, and her legs went. Jackson caught her. Boone caught her. She caught the rail. "Em," she couldn't speak. "Em, honey, don't. Emily, don't you call me that." Her voice was a wreck. "Don't you dare come up that ladder after 12 years and call me that." Daniel Carter stopped where he was. "Cale," he said, "say something else." "Em, say something else." She was screaming, and there was nothing left in her to scream with, and she did it anyway. "You've had 12 years to think of something to say to me. You've had 12 years. You put a piece of paper under my pillow. You were close enough to touch me. You stood outside that door on June 9th, and you watched me, and you walked away. So say something else. Say the thing you've had 12 years to think of." Daniel Carter stood there on the deck with his hands at his sides. "I don't have one," he said. "What?" "I don't have a thing to sue him." His voice was old and dry, and it did not shake, and that was somehow the worst part. "I've written about 400 of them. In my head, out loud. On paper twice, and I burned both of them. And every one of them was garbage because every one of them was a man explaining why he was right, and honey, I wasn't right." Emily's face crumpled. "So no, Daniel said. "I don't have anything. There's no version of it where you shouldn't hate me. I made my peace with that a long time ago. What I couldn't make peace with was you being in the water." "You let me be in the water." "No, ma'am." Daniel Carter's eyes went for the first time to Marcus Vale. "He put you in the water. I got you out." Everything stopped. Hayes turned. "Say that again." "Sir, ask your radar man what he had at 0411 this morning." "He had a heat signature. He had a heat signature 11 miles out that held position for 4 minutes in a current that runs 2 knots, Daniel said. "Commander, you're a smart man. Ask yourself how a woman on a piece of loose hull holds a position for 4 minutes. Hayes went white. "She was anchored," he said. "There's a 60-pound drogue on 80 feet of line clipped to the underside of that hull," Daniel Carter said. "I put it there on the second night. She was drifting southwest at 2 knots, and she was going to be past your exercise box by Wednesday, and nobody was ever going to see her again. So I got in the water, and I clipped a drogue to the bottom of my daughter's raft, and I parked her in the middle of your search grid." Emily made a sound. "You were in the water," she whispered. "Yeah." "You were. I was on it. I was on it. You were 3 feet under me and you didn't. I was under you for about 40 minutes, Em. Why didn't you come up? Because he had a boat 8 miles east running a sweep with thermals, Daniel said. And a man in the water is one signature. 2 men in the water is a rescue, and a rescue is a story, and a story is a reason to come look. I was dying. I know. I was dying and you swam away. I know exactly what I did, Daniel Carter said. I checked your breathing 4 times. I counted your respirations. On the second night, you dropped to 9 and I put my hand on your back and I stayed there for 2 minutes. And I decided you'd hold till morning. And his voice finally moved 1 degree, and that 1 degree was worse than shouting. That was the closest I have been to you since you were 22 years old. And it was 2 minutes, and then I got off your raft. And I have never done anything harder in my life, including the thing you're about to find out about. Nobody said a word. Then I went back to my boat, Daniel said, and I sat 2 miles off and I watched a Navy ship pull my daughter out of the ocean at 4:51 this morning, and I put my head down on the wheel, and I want you to know that's the first time I've cried since your mother. Emily Carter was shaking so hard, Boone had both arms around her. The page, she said. Yeah. Under my pillow on the 18th. Yeah. You gave me a position and a date 6 days out. You told me where to be. Yes, I did. And Marcus Vale showed up instead of you, Emily said. So which is it, Dad? Because either he read your page or you gave me to him. The deck went absolutely silent. Daniel Carter looked at his daughter for a long moment. He was always going to be there, he said. Emily's mouth fell open. You knew, she said. You knew he'd be there. Emily, listen to me. You gave me a time and a place, and you knew he'd be there instead of you. Yes. The word landed on that deck like a body. Yes, Daniel Carter said again. I knew. I sat in the dark on a boat 2 miles from my own daughter, and I decided that the only way this ever ends is if the Navy pulls you out of the water alive, with that notebook strapped to your ribs in front of witnesses with a paper trail on a warship where nobody can put it in a drawer. You used me. Yes. You both used me. Yes, Daniel Carter said, and Marcus Vale from the tender said quietly, there it is. Emily Carter looked from one of them to the other. 2 old men, one in a windbreaker, one with a white beard, 12 years, 11 names, her whole life standing on a deck in the sun looking back at her with the same expression. Oh my God, she said, you're the same. You're the same person. She was laughing again, that terrible laugh, and Jackson Reed wanted to put his hands over his ears. You're the exact same man. He threw me into the ocean to smoke you out, and you left me in it to build a paper trail, and neither of you, Emily, neither of you ever once thought about asking me. Nobody had an answer for that. Nobody had an answer for that for a long, long time. Then Commander Michael Hayes, who had been standing very still with a recorder in his pocket for 4 minutes, said one word. Enough. He walked into the middle of it. Captain Carter. Daniel's head came up at the rank. It was an old reflex. It was 12 years old and it still worked. Sir. I carried Ray Delacroix's casket, Hayes said. Daniel Carter closed his eyes. He's the 3rd name in that book. Your name's in there with him. I stood in Arlington in my dress blues and I believed every word they told me, and then I went home and I got on with my life for 12 years. Hayes's voice was shaking now, and he let it. And this morning I pulled a woman out of the ocean who's been carrying my friend's name in a waterproof case strapped to her ribs, and I have listened to 2 grown men stand on my deck and explain to her very reasonably why they each had good cause to leave her in the water. Sir, I have one question, Hayes said. And Captain, and I want you to understand something. My recorder is running. My exec is standing right there. That man has just confessed to attempted murder on my deck in front of 11 witnesses, and I am going to hold him for it, and none of that is going to matter, none of it, unless somebody answers the actual question. He stepped up to Daniel Carter. There was an order, Hayes said. 11 names, 11 weeks. There's an operation that officially never happened, and 11 men are officially dead, and one of them is standing on my deck with a beard. So somebody signed something. Emily Carter stopped breathing. Captain Carter, Michael Hayes said, whose signature is on the order. Daniel Carter looked at his daughter. He looked at her for a long time, long enough that Marcus Vale down in the tender put his hand over his eyes. Dad, Emily said. Dad, whose signature is on the order, Captain Daniel Carter, took a breath. Mine, he said. Nobody moved. Emily Carter heard it. She heard the word and it went into her, and it did not stop. It went all the way through, and for about 4 seconds, she was not a woman standing at a rail on a Navy ship. She was 22 years old in a coat that didn't fit, holding a folded flag saying thank you. No, she said. No, Himela. You say it again. Her voice came out flat and strange. You look at me and you say it again. Mine, Daniel Carter said. My signature's on the order. I wrote it, I signed it, and I sent 11 men into a place I already knew was wrong. Emily Carter let go of the rail. She didn't fall. Boone had her by the coat and Jackson Reed had her by the elbow. And she didn't fall, but everything went out of her at once, and Jackson felt it happen, felt the exact second 12 years of a woman's life dropped out from under her feet. 12 years, she whispered. I spent 12 years. She was staring at him. I gave up everything. I gave up Dad. I didn't get married. Did you know that I had a man, his name was Peter? He was good. He was so good. And he asked me twice, and I said, not yet, because I had a lead in Norfolk. A lead. I said not yet to a good man because of a lead. Honey, Mom died asking me to stop. Daniel Carter's face did something terrible. She asked me at the end, Emily said. She had about a day left, and her hands were like paper, and she said, Emmy, let him go. Let him rest. And I sat there, and I held her hand, and I lied to my dying mother's face. I said, okay, Mom. I said, okay. Her voice broke wide open. And then I buried her on a Tuesday, and I was on a plane to Virginia on Thursday. Emily, please, because I was looking for you. She was screaming, and there was nothing behind it. She was running on fumes and salt and rage. I was looking for the man they murdered. I built a whole life out of it, Dad. Every friend I lost, every job I quit, every year I burned it for a hero. I burned it for a man who got killed for knowing too much. And you signed it. You signed. Her legs went. This time they went all the way. Boone got her into the chair, and she sat there with her ruined hand in her lap and her head down and her whole body coming apart, and Daniel Carter took one step toward her. Don't, Jackson Reed said. Daniel stopped. Chief, sir, I've got about 11 years of not putting my hands on people who outrank me, Jackson said quietly, and I'd like to keep the streak going. Don't come any closer to her right now. Daniel Carter stayed where he was, and Marcus Vale from the tender said, tell her the rest. Shut up, Marcus. Tell her the rest. I said, shut your mouth. 12 years. Vale came up out of the bow, and his hands were on the Guardian's rail, and Hayes's men had their eyes on him, and he did not care. 12 years, Danny, and you're going to stand on a United States warship in front of your own daughter and give her half. You're going to give her the half that makes it simple. Marcus, because she'll take it. Vale's voice cracked, and it wasn't the warm crack. It wasn't the performance. It was the real thing, and it was ugly. Look at her, Danny. She'll take the simple version, and she'll go home and hate you, and you'll get to sail off and be dead again, and it'll be clean. That's what you want. 12 years I've watched you take the clean road, and it always costs somebody else. Emily's head came up. What's the rest, she said. It doesn't. What's the rest? Silence. Then Hayes said, Captain Carter, if you don't answer her, I will hold you for it. I don't have the charge yet, but I'll find one by Thursday. Answer her. Daniel Carter stood there. I signed it, he said. That's true. I want that on his recorder, and I want it in a transcript, and I want it in front of a judge, because it's true, and I'm not going to spend one more day of my life letting a true thing be a secret. Dad, I signed it because a man told me 11 men were going in with or without my name on the paper, Daniel said. And I believed him. And I thought if my name's on it, I go with them. If my name's on it, I'm in the room. If my name's on it, I can pull them out when it turns. And did it turn? It turned in 19 minutes, Daniel Carter said. The deck was so quiet that Emily could hear the water on the hull. 19 minutes, Daniel said. And I called it. I called the abort. I called it 4 times on 2 different nets. And I have never once in 12 years been able to prove I said a word, because that traffic doesn't exist. There's no tape. There's no log. The operation didn't happen, Em, so the abort didn't happen either. That's how it works. That's the whole trick. You can't be recorded refusing an order that was never given. Then who? Ray Delacroix carried me out. Emily stopped. Hayes did not move. Say that again, Hayes said. His voice had gone to nothing. Ray carried me out, sir, 1,100 meters. I had a piece of a truck in my back and I couldn't use my legs, and Ray Delacroix put me over his shoulder and he carried me 1,100 meters and he went back. He went back. He went back for Torres, Daniel said. And I told him not to. Commander, I want you to hear this because you carried his box. I told him not to. I had my hand in his collar and I told him Torres was gone. And Ray looked at me and he said, Daniel Carter stopped. He had to stop. He said what? Hayes said. He said you'd go. Michael Hayes turned away and put his hand over his mouth. And he was right, Daniel said. So I let go of his collar. And that's the last thing I ever did as a man with a name. Emily was staring at him. Then why are you dead? She said. Because I woke up in a room in Germany 11 days later, and a man I'd never met sat down next to my bed and told me I had two choices. Daniel's voice was very steady now, and steady was how she knew it was the truth. He said, Captain, there's a version where you're a dead hero and your family gets a flag and a pension and a headstone. And there's a version where you're the officer who signed the order that killed 10 men and your daughter gets to grow up with that. You didn't, Osa. He had it all written out, Em. Both versions. He had the citation for the first one printed already. You took it. I took it, Daniel Carter said. Emily Carter put her good hand over her face. Ah, she said. Ah, God, Dad. I took it, and I've paid for it every hour since. You let them make you a hero. Yes. You let them bury 10 men under a lie so I wouldn't have to hear the truth about you. Yes. That's the most selfish thing I've ever heard in my life. Yes, it is, Daniel Carter said. It's the most selfish thing I've ever done, and I'd like you to say it out loud again, because I've been waiting 12 years for somebody to say it to my face and nobody ever has. Emily looked up at him. Then why are you here, she said. Because it didn't take. What? The deal didn't take him. And there it was. There was the first thing all day that sounded like a father. You were supposed to grow up. You were supposed to bury me and get married and have a life, and I was going to sit somewhere warm and be a dead hero, and that was the price, that was the whole price, that was what 10 men bought. And you didn't do it. Dad, you didn't bury me. He was crying now. He'd gone 61 years and 12 of them dead, and he stood on that deck and cried in front of 11 sailors. I watched you not bury me for 12 years. I watched you quit jobs. I watched you lose that man. I watched you at your mother's funeral from a parking lot 400 yards away. I sat in a rented car and watched my wife go in the ground and watched my daughter stand there alone, and you were alone. You were the only one standing there, and I had to sit in that car. Then why didn't you? Because every time I almost did, he was there. Daniel Carter pointed at the tender, and his hand was shaking. 12 years, Marcus. 12 years, Danny, Vale agreed. You never stopped. Not once, not 1 week. Not one day, Marcus Vale said. Not one single day in 12 years. Emily looked between them and something in her face changed. Why, she said, and nobody answered. Why, she said again louder. Why does an operations director for a research vessel spend 12 years hunting one man? Who are you? Who are you actually? Because I've been telling myself for 6 days that you're the man who killed my father and my father's standing right there. So who the hell are you? Marcus Vale looked up at her, and then very slowly he pulled up the sleeve of the windbreaker on his left arm. Emily Carter went white. You've seen it, Vale said. That's a fragmentation repair. Yeah. There's a plate under it. I felt the plate. Yeah. And a date. And a date, Marcus Vale said. Emily's mouth moved and nothing came out. Ask him, Tom, Vale said, and he was looking at Daniel. Go on, honey. Ask your old man what Torres's first name was. Daniel Carter closed his eyes. Dad, ask him. And Dad, what was Torres's first name? Daniel Carter did not answer. Marcus Vale said. The world went out from under Emily Carter for the second time in 5 minutes. His name was Marcus Torres, Vale said quietly. Marcus Torres Vale. My mother's people were in Sinaloa, and my father's were in Bakersfield, And every man in that unit called me Torres because Vale sounded like an accountant. He let the sleeve back down. I'm the 11th name in your book, sweetheart. I'm the one Ray Delacroix went back for. Emily could not breathe. He got to me, Vale said. That's the part nobody wrote down. Ray got to me. He got me 80 meters and he got hit. And he put me down behind a wall. And he told me to be quiet. And I lay there. And I was quiet and I listened to him die about 6 feet from my head. And that took a long time, honey. That took a real long time. Arcus, shut up, Danny. Vale never looked away from Emily. I was 19 days in a hole after that, and then 11 months in a hospital. And when I came out, I was dead. Officially. There's a stone with my name on it about 90 yards from your father's. My mother's still alive. She's 81. She lives in Bakersfield, and she thinks her son died in a helicopter accident in 2013. And I have not been able to knock on that door in 12 years, because the day I do, I'm a man who came back from the dead, and somebody starts asking questions and I go in a drawer. Then why? Because they gave me the same deal. Vale's voice finally rose once. The same man, the same room, the same two versions. And I said no. The deck was dead silent. I said no, Marcus Vale said. I said no, sir, thank you, I'd like the real one. Print the real one. And he said, son, there's no such thing. And I said, fine. And I got out of that bed, and I have spent 12 years knocking on every door in this country trying to get somebody, anybody to put me under oath and let me say Ray Delacroix's name out loud. He looked up at Hayes. Commander, he said, do you know how many people have ever asked me a question with a recorder running? Hayes said nothing. You, Vale said, 40 minutes ago, 12 years. You're the first. Nobody spoke. And him, Vale said, and he pointed at Daniel Carter without looking. He said, yes. That's the thing, honey. That's the whole thing. He took the deal. He took the flag and the citation and the stone, and every year that man stayed dead was another year that the story stayed clean, because they needed the officer who signed it to be a hero. If Danny Carter's a dead hero, the operation's a tragedy. If Danny Carter's alive, the operation's a crime. Emily's head turned slowly to her father. Is that true? She said. Yes, Daniel Carter said. You were the lid. I was the lid. For 12 years, you were the reason he couldn't get anybody to listen. Yes, and you knew it. Every day, Daniel Carter said, every single day. Emily Carter closed her eyes. So he came after you, she said. He came after me for 12 years, and he was right to, Daniel said. And I want that on the record too. He was right to. He was the only one of us who was right. And I ran from him. I ran from a man who was right for 12 years because if he ever got me in a room, I'd have to say out loud what I've just said on this deck. And you'd have lost the flag, Emily said. Daniel Carter's face broke. I'd have lost you, he said. What? I'd have lost you. He was shouting now, and it was the first time, and it tore something. You think I cared about a flag? You were 22. You had my picture on your wall. You had my picture on your wall in a frame, and I stood in a hospital in Germany, and a man told me I could either be that picture or I could be the man who signed the paper, and I couldn't. He stopped. I couldn't take that away from you, Daniel Carter said. So I took everything else instead. I took your mother. I took your 20s. I took your whole life, and I gave you a picture on a wall, and I told myself that was love. Emily Carter sat in that chair and looked at her father. You should have let me hate you, she said. I know. I'd have been fine. I'd have hated you, and I'd have married Peter. I know, Em. 12 years. I know. And then Emily Carter said the thing that broke every man on that deck. I'd have forgiven you, she said. Dad, that's what you didn't even ask. You didn't even ask me. You decided I couldn't take it. I was 22, and you decided I couldn't take my own father being a man. She was sobbing, and she was furious, and she was both at once. I'd have forgiven you in a year, maybe 2. I'd have been mad, and I'd have forgiven you, and I'd have had my mother, and I'd have had you, and I'd have had a life. And instead, you gave me a hero, and I ate it for 12 years, and it took everything. Daniel Carter got down on his knees on the deck of the USS Guardian. He was a 61-year-old Navy captain, and he got down on his knees in front of a woman in a chair with a splinted hand, and he did not say anything because there wasn't anything, and everybody on that deck looked away, except Marcus Vale, who watched every second of it. Get up, Emily said. Get up. You don't get that. You don't get to kneel. Her voice was shaking. Get up and answer his question. What? His question. Emily Carter turned her head and looked down into the tender at the man who had thrown her into the Pacific Ocean. 12 years. He's been asking one question. Ask it, Marcus. Marcus Vale looked at her for a long moment. Danny, he said, will you say it under oath? Daniel Carter got to his feet. Yes, he said. Say the whole thing. I'll say the whole thing. I'll say my name, and I'll say the date, and I'll say the 11 names, and I'll say the man's name who sat next to my bed. And Marcus, I know his name. I've known it for 12 years, and I'll say it into a microphone in front of all and everybody, and I will not stop talking until they turn the lights out on me. You're lying. No, Mrs. You've said this before, Danny P. Not to her, Daniel Carter said, and that landed on Marcus Vale like a fist. He stood in that tender with his hand on the rail and his mouth open, and something came up out of him, some 12-year-old thing, and he put his forehead down on the guardian's hull, and his shoulders went. Nobody said a word. Mr. Vale, it was Hayes. Vale didn't look up. Mr. Vale, 40 minutes ago, you asked me to arrest you. Yeah. You still want that? Marcus Vale lifted his head. His face was wrecked. Yes, sir, he said. Please, sir. You understand what you're asking for. You confessed on my deck. That's attempted murder. That's a federal case. And Mr. Vale, that woman's testimony is going to bury you. Sir, I'm counting on it. You'll go to prison. Sir, I've been in prison for 12 years, Marcus Vale said. The difference is nobody's had to write anything down. You put me in a courtroom and they have to write it down. They have to file it. They have to put it on a docket and give it a number, and a number can't go in a drawer, sir. His voice cracked all the way through. And to get me in that courtroom, they have to prove I threw a woman in the ocean. And to prove that they have to say who she is. And who she is Captain Daniel Carter's daughter. Hayes closed his eyes. You built it, he said. I built it, sir. It's the only door I had left. So I threw an innocent woman into the Pacific Ocean, and I want you to write that down too. Commander, I want that in the transcript with the rest of it. I'm not a good man. I've never once said I was. You're not a good man, Emily Carter said. Vale looked up at her. No, ma'am. You broke my hand. Yes, ma'am. I'm going to testify against you, she said. I'm going to sit in that box, and I'm going to describe every second of it, and I'm going to do it well, Marcus. I'm going to do it so well. And they're going to put you away for a long time, and I'm not going to feel bad about it for 1 minute. Ma'am, Marcus Vale said, that's the nicest thing anybody said to me in 12 years. And then Emily Carter did the last thing on earth anybody expected. Boone, she said, ma'am, get a bag and get down in that boat. Ma'am, his knee's bad and he hasn't slept in 6 days and he's been standing in a tender for 40 minutes in the boat and his lips are white. She looked at Boone. Sailor, look at him. He's about 90 seconds from going down and he's going to hit that gunwale with his head on the way. Boone stared at her. Ma'am, that man, I know exactly what that man did to me, Emily Carter said. Get in the boat. Boone got in the boat. And Marcus Vale sat down on a thwart and let a 24-year-old corpsman put a line in his arm, and he looked up at the woman at the rail and he said, why? Because I'm the medic, Emily Carter said. That's what I am. That's the only thing in 12 years that was ever actually true about me. She held on to that rail with her one good hand. You two took everything else, she said. You don't get that. They put into San Diego at 6:14 the next morning, and there were 41 people on that pier, and every one of them was there because Michael Hayes had spent the night on a phone with a paper trail in his hand and a recorder in his pocket, refusing over and over in his own voice to make one single call that wasn't on the record. He was relieved of command in November. He testified in January. Marcus Vale went to trial in March, and Emily Carter sat in the box for 4 hours and did exactly what she said she'd do. She described every second of it, and she did it well, and she never once looked away from him, and Marcus Vale sat at that defense table and watched her do it with an expression that made 2 jurors cry. He pled to everything. He fought nothing. His attorney begged him. And on the 4th day, an assistant United States attorney stood up and asked the question that had to be asked. The question you cannot avoid when you are proving a man threw a specific woman into a specific ocean. Ms. Carter, who is your father? And Emily Carter said into a microphone in a federal courtroom, on the record with a stenographer's hands moving, "Captain Daniel Carter, United States Navy. He's alive. He's sitting in the third row." The number went on a docket. The docket could not go in a drawer. It took 19 months. Daniel Carter testified for 11 days. He said the 11 names. He said the man's name. He said it into a microphone in front of God and everybody, and he did not stop talking. And when they tried to close the room, he said the names louder. And when they threatened him, he said them again. And Emily sat in the third row every single day and did not miss 1 hour of it. There is a headstone in Arlington with Marcus Torres Vale's name on it. It's still there. They never took it down, and he never asked them to. His mother was 83 by then. Emily drove her up from Bakersfield herself 4.5 hours and sat in the visitor's room with her while an old woman looked through glass at a son she'd buried 12 years earlier. And that old woman put her hand on the glass and said one word in Spanish, and Marcus Vale put his forehead against the other side of it and did not make a sound. Emily Carter drove her home. She's driven her every month since. Ray Delacroix's name is on a wall now. The real one with the real date, and under it, the real sentence, the one Michael Hayes wrote himself and fought 14 months to get carved. He went back, and Emily Carter went back to work. That's the part that surprised everybody. There were offers, there were books, there were shows, there was a producer who called her 9 times. She said no to all of it, and she went back to being a paramedic in San Diego, and she works nights because her hand aches in the mornings, and nights are better. She never fully got the hand back. 2 of the fingers don't close all the way. She learned to run a line one-handed, and she's faster at it than the kids are with 2. Jackson Reed still calls her every year on the 16th of June. He never says much. He just wants to hear her pick up. Tyler Boone named his daughter Emily. He never told her why, and she found out anyway, and she cried in a parking lot for 20 minutes about it. Cole Barrett brought his 3 kids to meet her. The middle one asked her if it was scary out there in the ocean, and Emily Carter got down on one knee and told her the truth, which was yes. And the little girl asked her how she did it anyway, and Emily said, "I got mad. Being mad works better than being brave. Brave runs out." Her father lives 40 minutes from her. They're not fixed. They will never be fixed. She has Sunday dinner with him twice a month, and some of those dinners are good, and some of them she leaves early. And once she got up in the middle of one and walked out to her car and sat there for an hour, and he waited, and she came back in and finished her plate and didn't say anything about it, and neither did he. That's what it is now. That's what's left. 2 people at a table doing the work. And on the day they read the verdict, when it was finally over, a reporter got past the barrier on the courthouse steps and shoved a phone at her and asked the question everybody had been asking for 2 years, how a woman survives 3 days alone in the Pacific Ocean with a shattered hand and no water and no vest and no hope. Emily Carter looked at him. "I wasn't surviving," she said. "Everybody keeps getting that wrong. I wasn't hanging on hoping somebody would come. I was already dead out there. I decided that on the first night." "Then why did you hold on?" And Emily Carter, who had been thrown into an ocean by one man to draw out a second man who had been left in it by her own father, who had held a folded page inside a crushed hand for 3 days until the ink printed itself backward on her skin. Emily Carter looked into that camera and gave the only answer she ever gave. "Because somebody had to be alive to say it out loud," she said. 11 men couldn't. My mother couldn't. So it was going to be me, and dying out there would have been the same as letting it go in a drawer, and I have spent my entire life watching men decide what I could and couldn't take. She held up her hand, the one that never closed all the way. "Nobody decides that for me anymore," she said. "The ocean tried for 3 days. It lost.